Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time to join Crunchbase today for our third installment of our Ahead by Crunchbase series. Today, we're talking about finding hidden pipeline using market and competitor intelligence. Now, that's a mouthful. Try to say that 3 times fast, but I won't make you do that today. But before we get to all of these incredible insights that we have to offer, of course, meet the people behind the curtain, if you will. My name is Liz Beavers. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Crunchbase, and I'm so delighted to be joined by my counterpart in all things Ahead by Crunchbase, Nick. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Nick. I'm the director of revenue enablement at Crunchbase, and I'm currently enabling our go-to-market teams on all of these things. So excited to talk a little bit about what's worked for us.
Perfect. And later we are going to be joined by our colleague Sally Harmon, who is our lead for event strategy and operations, and also Connor Bond, an enterprise solutions engineer. They're actually going to be giving us 2 different demos within the Crunchbase solution for everything we're going to be focusing on for today. But before we get too far ahead, we have a lot of topics in our Ahead series, specifically on how to bring go to market workflows to life. All of this is underpinned by the data that Crunchbase has to offer. Now, we actually want to kick things off with a poll. And Nick, if you don't mind starting our poll for us, we want to hear from you all. If one of your reps just closed a deal, or perhaps you just closed won a deal, what does your team do with that information next? Do they go to the customer? Do they ask them for a case study? Do they build out an internal win report? Or do they take that point of view and they use that for a use case on why they won? Perhaps you work to build a new prospect list from that detail. Or do you do absolutely as you should and celebrate the win and move on to the next one? We'll give you guys just a second to answer those. But Nick, as these come in, I'm curious your like knee-jerk thoughts around this.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about a deal closure, like the short answer is that all of these things are good things to do, right? So I think I've been in a lot of different go-to-market organizations where everyone usually gets the first two right, right? A deal closes, they ask the customer for a case study, or maybe their PMM team does, or their marketing team. And that's normally pretty tried and true. And then for B, most people do some form of a win report. They do some sort of like, hey, let's share back with the team kind of everything that we've learned from the deal. But where things get a little bit trickier is with these last three, where we say, you know what, we just closed a deal. Let's go ahead and start to look at what is the point of view that we can build from this? What is the prospect list that we can maybe edit or expand on from that one deal? And then ultimately, how can we celebrate it not just within the sales team, but also across the rest of the organization? So I see that we're sharing the results here. And yeah, I mean, this is not surprising to me. I think most of us are doing the right things when it comes to celebrating. I am very happy to see that there are a lot of folks on the call that are building points of view and prospect lists from the backs of their wins. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use Crunchbase to bolster that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So, as we move right along, Nick, I know that you were kind of walking through this, but I also know this is something that you're really close to with your previous experience and also what we're doing here at Crunchbase as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the case studies and the win reports, you should always have that share out. Persona enablement is one that we've recently started to dive into more on our own go to market team. And what that really means is whenever I've closed a deal, not only am I looking at who did I sell that to from a title perspective, which type of company did I sell that to, but also like what micro industry is that company in? What are the different things that their products provide to others? And how can we ultimately make that win repeatable? So looking at the overall timeline of a deal to understand, how we can drive future wins with those personas. And then that leads into the fourth part, which is being able to reframe our prospect lists in that direction.
Absolutely. And again, I know you've been hearing us here talk about why a customer win is valuable. But I think just to Nick's point, that next critical question is how do you actually turn that one win into a repeatable pipeline motion? I think as we've worked closely and heard from go-to-market customers and teams, I think it really comes down to answering three progressively smarter questions and answering it with these signals that are unique to Crunchbase. So first, taking a look at fit. Who else looks like the customers you've already proven that you can win, not based on a broad industry label, but based on what those customers actually build and who they actually compete with. And that's where we'll get into a little bit later. Crunchbase's competitors, powered by our products and services data, can come into play. The second consideration is concentration. Once you've found those companies, where exactly are they concentrated? Are they all part of the same niche market? Are there adjacent segments that your team hasn't been targeting that look just as promising? That's exactly like Nick mentioned, where micro industries can be a huge unlock for go to market teams. And last but certainly not least, the timing of it all, right? Even if you've identified the right companies and the right markets, which of those markets really deserves your attention at this moment? Not every market is growing at the same pace, and where you're focusing your team matters. And that's the role that Market Insights by Crunchbase can play, helping you understand where momentum is building so that you can strike at the right time. Now, I just want you guys to keep these questions and these signals in the back of your mind as we're moving through the session. But before I power ahead, Nick, I'd love to get a pulse check from you when you think about these three questions and Crunchbase's signals that could strengthen how a team addresses these. Like from your go-to-market experience, is there one in particular that you think organizations are overlooking or could benefit from the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one that stands out to me the most is this second one on concentration in micro industries. So not only is this a newer release and a very powerful release from Crunchbase, but I think it's very easy for me to say, oh, we just sold to this software company or this SaaS company, or oh, we just sold to this AI company. So let's go try to sell to other software and AI companies. And that's such a broad stroke to say, okay, well, yeah, but like those companies are so differentiated between them. It's quite another thing to come in and say, okay, we just sold to an AI company that specializes in security and observability for early stage startups. And that is the specific product that they offer. And we know that our product can help theirs in this, XYZ way. So let's go after that niche. Let's go after those specific micro industries and really hone in on that win story and taking it to their competitors and similar companies. So I think micro industries is one that people tend to overlook, and that's one that has a lot of power.
Yeah, I totally agree. And before we actually jump into some demos to show you all where you can be getting the greatest squeeze from all of this wonderful Crunchbase data, I do want to spend some time talking about a huge question of why Crunchbase's data. Now, what makes us the right solve for go-to-market teams? The signals that you'll see in our demonstrations today across Crunchbase's solution, from competitors and micro industries to predictions and market insights, is only as valuable as the data underneath it. And that is where Crunchbase is different. With a foundation that's been built over nearly 2 decades, we've developed one of the industry's most comprehensive private market data sets, combining exceptional depth and coverage that continues to grow. We bring together proprietary first party data, AI powered discovery, rigorous validation from our data management team, and real time engagement from more than 80 million professionals to create a view of the private market that no one else can replicate, and one that customers can trust. That gives us the unique ability to understand how the market's behaving in real time, not just what gets reported after the fact. While other providers may tell you what's happened, Crunchbase helps you understand what's happening now and anticipate what's coming next. That's our data advantage. Data you can trust, predictions, and market intelligence that you can actually act on. And that foundation powers everything you'll see through the remainder of our session, both inside Crunchbase's platform and at scale through our API. Now, Nick, I want to pass things over to you to talk a little bit more about how this foundation enables predictions and market intelligence that go to market teams can actually act on and incorporate into their workflows.
Yeah, and I think that, if I would also plug, if you guys have had not had the chance to go look at episodes 1 and 2 of Ahead by Crunchbase, I would highly encourage you to go do that. And maybe Sally can put some of those links in the chat for us. But in episode 1, we really showed you how to use these predictions to find high fit accounts. So first, how do you find that list of accounts that you need to go after? How do you prioritize that with momentum and get there before before your competitors do? So those are things like growth prediction, heat scores, insights, etc. And then in episode 2, we talked about, well, now how do you engage at the right moment of buying power? And this is something that I keep hearing from our customers and prospects. I want to get in front of them right when that money is getting to them so that they have money to spend on our product or our service. So that's where our funding predictions, IPO predictions, all of the likely investors, recent funding announcements, all of those things come in to understand that right timing. And then today we're talking about targeting the right ICP and territory, especially off the backs of a recent win. And I think that that's going to really help bring it all together on where to go after from an industry or market perspective. So there's lots more to talk about, and we'll ask you at the end what you want to see next. But these are all signals that I think are incredibly good to bring into your strategy.
Definitely. Now we've buried the lead a few times. So, as far as what you'll see next, first, we're going to have a demo by Sally inside Crunchbase's platform demonstrating what you could do after a win using some of these signals. And that's going to be followed by an overview from our counterpart, Connor, using Crunchbase's API actually with a dashboard on Snowflake. Now, as you take a look at these, I want you to keep these 4 questions in mind. Who else could your team win? Why are they a credible fit? Where are these opportunities concentrated and which ones should you prioritize first? But with that, you've heard enough from me. I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to a pre recorded demo that Sally put together.
Thanks, Liz and Nick. Let's bring this workflow to life in Crunchbase. Imagine I'm a GTM rep and I just won Kong as a customer. Rather than starting from scratch to build my next prospect list, I want to use what made Kong a great fit to find more companies like it. I could start with a broad search or work from a static account list, but that usually means sorting through hundreds or thousands of companies that aren't actually a great fit. Instead, let's use what we already know about Kong to uncover adjacent opportunities that share similar products, markets, and competitive dynamics. So here I am on Kong's company profile. As I scroll, you'll notice there's a wealth of information available, from funding history, predictions and insights, to notable company events. But before we jump to market intelligence, I want to make one quick stop. Products and services is one of Crunchbase's most valuable proprietary datasets, and it serves as the foundation for everything we're about to do. Rather than simply classifying companies into broad categories, Crunchbase understands what companies actually build. That product level understanding is what powers our competitor intelligence and helps us surface much more relevant opportunities. Let's keep scrolling down to our market intelligence section, which includes competitors, where Crunchbase surfaces the businesses most relevant to Kong. What makes this especially valuable for GTM teams is that Crunchbase goes beyond identifying similar companies or adjacent opportunities. It explains why those companies belong on the list. For every competitor, you'll see the products they overlap on, whether they compete in the same markets, and how closely their offerings align. That turns what would normally be a static list into explainable competitive intelligence you can actually use. That context is what transformed this from research to pipeline generation. Let's say Kong is a customer because of its Kong Gateway Enterprise product. Instead of guessing who else might be a fit, I can immediately identify companies offering competing products. Now I have a defensible reason to prioritize and go after those accounts, and a proven customer story that can shape my outreach. I may even come across companies that weren't already on my prospect list. They may not be the most obvious names in this space, but because Crunchbase evaluates competition at the product level, it can surface meaningful overlap that traditional lookalike lists often missed. By selecting View All, we can expand beyond the top competitors we saw on Kong's profile and explore a much larger set of competitors and adjacent businesses. This is where the workflow really starts to scale. We've taken one successful customer and turned it into a repeatable pipeline building strategy. Instead of asking, who else should I call? We're asking, who else looks like the customers we've already won? Your team can take what it already knows, the use case that resonated, the problem you solved, the value proposition that worked, and apply those insights to a broader group of high fit accounts. Now, as we begin refining this list, we can layer on additional filters. Maybe I'm focused on an organization in a particular stage of growth, or I want to identify companies that I predict are likely to fundraise soon. It's easy to combine competitors with Crunchbase's broader private market company data, insights, and predictions. You'll also notice a new column you can add to your view, micro industries. Instead of narrowing down this list with broad industry labels like software or information technology, I can filter these using much more granular market segments. That gives me a far more precise way to identify organizations that truly fit my ideal customer profile. From there, I can layer in additional Crunchbase signals like company growth or funding predictions to help prioritize which of those high fit accounts not only look like my recent closed one or best fit customers, but also have the strongest buying momentum. So we're not only finding relevant companies, we're combining fit with timing to focus our outreach where it has the greatest potential impact. If you missed our first Ahead by Crunchbase episode or just want a refresher, I highly recommend checking it out. We spend more time exploring how these additional signals help prioritize and segment your target accounts, and today's workflow builds really nicely on that foundation. Now let's take this one step further. We've used micro industries to refine our account list, but what if we want to better understand the broader markets those companies operate in or discover adjacent markets we might not have considered yet? That's where the market map comes in. Filtering helped me narrow down the right accounts, but I can use the market map to help me understand the broader market those accounts live in and where I could or should expand next. We can see segments within the market maps powered by Crunchbase Micro Industries, our dynamic, highly granular industry taxonomy built from our proprietary products and services data. Rather than relying on broad classifications like NAICS or SIC codes, micro industries organize companies based on the products and services they actually build, giving us a much more accurate picture of how today's private markets are structured. Our proprietary micro industries gives us the ability to quickly understand what a company actually does in the specific market segment in which it competes at a granular level. For a go-to-market team, that creates a much sharper way to identify opportunity inside of your ideal customer profile. Instead of targeting an entire industry, you can focus on a precise segment where your ideal customer profile is concentrated. And because the market map also highlights adjacent micro industries, it becomes incredibly easy to spot neighboring markets where your solution may resonate, and even those companies that were never on your radar before. So in just a few steps, we moved from one successful customer to a defensible list of competitors and lookalike accounts, clear reasoning why each company may be relevant, signals that help us prioritize outreach, and granular market segments where we can find even more opportunities. That's how Crunchbase helps turn customer and competitor intelligence into a practical pipeline workflow. And this is just what we can see directly within the Crunchbase software. The real power comes from taking these competitor and micro industry signals and bringing them into the systems and workflows your go-to-market team already uses. To show us what that can look like at scale and introduce one of our other new signals available in the Crunchbase API, Market Insights, I'll hand it over to Connor.
Thank you, Sally. What you're just seeing is how sellers can discover new opportunities directly within the Crunchbase platform. But most go-to-market teams, whether it's sales, marketing, or RevOps, they don't work in just one application. They're working in Salesforce, Power BI, Snowflake, Databricks, Tableau, wherever their data already lives. So today, I want to show you what that looks like when Crunchbase data is embedded directly into those existing workflows. This dashboard is built in Snowflake, powered entirely by Crunchbase's data through our API. In this dashboard, we're using Crunchbase data to help identify the next best opportunities for our sales team. Here, I've combined Crunchbase intelligence with some mock internal CRM data. Instead of treating every account the same, we're automatically surfacing the companies that deserve attention today. You'll notice I can filter by any firmographic attribute available through Crunchbase. In this example, I'm using location, which I have filtered to United States, revenue range, which I have filtered to 10 to 50 million, employee count, and customer owner. But you can customize this however you like. We're also using Crunchbase's growth score and heat scores to quickly identify where the strongest momentum exists. So instead of manually researching hundreds or even thousands of companies, I'm able to narrow the list down to just a handful of high priority accounts. That means our sellers know exactly where to focus their time, helping improve prospecting, pipeline generation, and ultimately reducing time to opportunity. I have Kong selected here, and I'll scroll down to our company detail page where we are immediately enriching the account with information our sales team needs. Also, alongside our CRM data, we're bringing in Crunchbase company intelligence, including funding history, industries, recent market insights, and more. This gives AEs, SDRs, and researchers the context they need before every conversation, allowing them to personalize outreach with relevant, up-to-date information. I'd also like to briefly call out our competitor sections down here in the corner, which comes directly from Crunchbase's competitive intelligence. Sally showed you how this looks within Crunchbase, but in my dashboard, it's purpose-built for this go-to-market workflow. So I'm not displaying every field here, but the API also returns competitive reasons behind each match, answering questions like, are they in the same geography? Do they serve the same industry? Do they offer similar products? And if they do, which specific products overlap? That additional context doesn't just tell you who looks similar, it tells you why they're a strong fit, making it much easier to identify lookalike accounts and uncover new pipelines beyond the customers you've already won. Next, we'll go to prediction overview. One of the advantages of Crunchbase API is that we're not only learning who a company is now today, but we're also understanding what they may do next. For example, will they raise another funding round? Are they likely to IPO? Could they make an acquisition or perhaps experience layoffs? Each prediction includes both a probability score and the contextual events that influence that prediction. That transparency helps build confidence in the data rather than treating the model as a black box. The final section, and the one I'm most excited to show you, is market insights and trends. Earlier, Sally showed you how Crunchbase's proprietary micro-industries gives a much more granular understanding of how markets are actually structured. Instead of grouping companies into broad industries like software, we're clustering them based on what they actually build using our products and services data. When we think about potential for what potential this data holds, it can be incredible input for go-to-market teams looking to build a much more precise ideal customer profile. Unlike company level data, market insights helps us understand what's happening across an entire market segment. So let's take API integration as an example. Every organization in Crunchbase that has products and services is classified into one or more micro industry. These micro industries are much more granular than traditional industry classifications and help you focus on the exact markets that matter most to your business. Instead of simply knowing a company is in software, we can identify whether they're competing in API integration, like I've selected, identity management, cloud infrastructure, or dozens of other highly specific markets. Crunchbase's market intelligence are built directly on top of those micro industries I've been talking about. Once we've identified these specific market segments, we can aggregate signals across hundreds or even thousands of companies to understand not just who's in the market, but where that market is heading. Think of a market insight as a standardized signal for market momentum. Instead of asking, is this market growing? You're able to answer, what's changing across this market and how significant is it? And what does that mean for my business? With that, one feature we've built into this dashboard is the ability to explore historical market snapshots. Rather than only looking at today's market, I can filter by the date and see how this market has evolved over time. For example, if we look at the API integration one I have selected, we can see that throughout 2024, as I open this dropdown, the market shows strong growth, but beginning in early 2025, it started to stabilize. That historical perspective helps teams understand whether a trend is accelerating, slowing down, or remaining consistent. Now I'll scroll back up and go through our latest insight. And this is where market insights becomes truly actionable. Instead of simply telling us that a market is growing or stable, Crunchbase explains why. Each insight tells us what signal has changed, the magnitude of that change, and the time frame over which it occurred, with the result being a plain language summary of what's happening. So we can take this first one, for example, our insight on June 29th. Due to viewer count over the last 180 days, there has been a 76% decrease in profile views. That context turns a simple market label into a market explanation, helping teams understand what's changing, why it's changing, and where they should focus next. Finally, you'll notice we also surface the companies participating in this micro industry down here at the bottom. In this example, we have 3 companies from our CRM that operate within this market that immediately gives us a list of competitors or potential customers that we can prioritize for outreach. Combined with Crunchbase's products and competitive intelligence, we can understand exactly what places each company into this market and where they overlap with one another. To wrap up, in just a few minutes, we've used Crunchbase data and Snowflake to build a workflow that identifies our highest priority accounts, enriches those accounts with funding, market, and company intelligence, provides visibility into their competitive landscape, predicts potential future business events, and delivers market level insights to help us understand broader trends impacting those companies. Ultimately, by combining market insights, competitive intelligence, and predictive signals, we're able to uncover opportunities that would be difficult to find through traditional prospecting alone. And because this data is delivered through Crunchbase's API, it can be embedded directly into the systems your teams already use, whether that's your CRM, data warehousing, BI platform, or any internal sales workflow. Instead of asking your teams to learn another tool, you can bring actionable market intelligence directly into their workflows they already rely on every day. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand it back over to Nick and Liz.
Terrific. That was such a wonderful overview. So I know we're running short on time here.
Thanks, Liz and
Oh
Nick.
no, I was trying to get my stuff to work. Let me pop back in here, that silly pre-record. And as we wrap up, I know we're at the final few minutes. Want to give you guys a few takeaway points. So Nick, I'll pass it to you to kind of close things out before we head into our last polls.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Connor and Sally did a great job here. So if you have one takeaway from this, it's pick a win, right? Take one closed won account that represents your best fit customer, maybe a recent one. Pull the competitors, expand into competitors, any adjacent or similar companies. Then start to narrow down your segments, your micro industries, take a look at your market insights to understand where these customers are clustered, and then ultimately rank those by momentum. And Connor showed you a great dashboard for prioritizing segments that are growing or emerging. And what you'll end up with is a list of companies to go after, segments, specific niches that you can go through, and timing that puts you ahead of your competitors. And you can access Crunchbase within any environment. So if you go to the next slide here, not only do you have our software, which Sally showed, you have our Snowflake and Databricks and Clay instances, Zapier, Salesforce, and HubSpot. You have our API, which can plug into your existing workflows. And then I'm very, very excited to mention our most recent MCP launch, which allows you to talk to our data in natural language through your AI tool of choice. So all of this to say that you can use Crunchbase to predict and win your next deal wherever you operate.
I really appreciate everybody's time. Thanks so much for joining us and take it easy. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, y'all. Bye, everyone.